Of course, coaching changes at Tennessee and Florida in particular, and two very well-respected coaches for different reasons. Jeremy Pruitt, known for his recruiting prowess and his work as a coordinator. For Dan Mullen, of course, he built the program in terms of in the last 10 to 15 years there at Mississippi State, or about the last 9 or 10 years in Starkville. These aren't situations where if you bring in Nick Saban into your division or Urban Meyer, everybody's just like, uh-oh. But they're very well-respected guys that know their football and should be able to build programs. And, of course, Mullen's already done it. What was the general response of the South Carolina faithful that you talk to on a daily basis in regards to some of the coaching changes, and specifically Pruitt and Mullen?
Honestly, that's not who people are looking at here. They see Georgia in the national championship game and the monster that Georgia has become all of a sudden under Kirby Smart. And they see Clemson in the national playoff and right here in the state of South Carolina. And so for the majority of South Carolina fans, your two main rivals in Georgia and South Carolina, they're in the college football playoff, and you're having to recruit against them on a year-out basis. And a lot of people, I don't think, realize South Carolina has beaten Florida 4 out of the last 6 years. Will Muschamp has beaten Tennessee the last 2 years. I think a lot of people here, when they hear the name Jeremy Pruitt, it's kind of a show me kind of attitude. The problems that first-time head coaches have had in the SEC, Kirby Smart notwithstanding, but the problems that first-time head coaches, not first-time SEC coaches, have in the SEC. Dan Mullen at Florida, I think that's something that South Carolina fans say we'll deal with when we have to cross that bridge. Let's worry about Florida when we get there. Right now, we see what Georgia's doing, playing in the national championship game. That's a constant competitor in recruiting going into the state of Georgia. Georgia coming into the state of South Carolina, and they see Clemson. So, honestly, Florida and Dan Mullen's not as big a concern right now for South Carolina fans either.
We've got Will Gunter on the line from 107.5 The Game. His show is the all-new early game. If you're up early, of course, that's the place to be. So outside the listening area there, where can people catch you, Will?
You can catch us on, iHeartRadio, I believe, or you can catch us on, radio, the website, 1075thegame.com, I believe is the best place, and you can tune in and listen that way.
Do a Google search. That always works. Always works.
That's right.
That. Will, we look at the South Carolina recruiting class from last year. I know that you were pretty pleased with it. Will Muschamp did a fine job, but if he's able to close on the current ranking, and of course the rankings mean absolutely nothing for 2019, but I'm checking it out right now, number 9 in the nation. Now, if he can hold on to that ranking, he'll be doing exceptionally well. But in regards to who the targets are, who the early commits are, your assessment of the 2019 class.
Obviously the big target, and I think most people would agree that he's not the biggest target, even though he's the highest ranked, is Quavarius Crouch, a running back linebacker out of Charlotte, out of Harding University in Charlotte. And South Carolina's been on him for a long time. He projects maybe as a running back at the college level, but now people are projecting him maybe as a linebacker at the professional level. He's a top 15 recruit. Bobby Bentley has been recruiting him for some time, but over the next few months, I think the interesting recruits are going to be the quarterback position. How does South Carolina handle the quarterback position? Garrett Schrader, 6'5", 190 pound, 200-pound quarterback out of the Charlotte area. He's got South Carolina and Mississippi State as his top 2. Joe Moorhead coming from Mississippi State, Joe Moorhead coming from Penn State, had offered Garrett Schrader while Penn State and built a relationship with him. He went to Mississippi State, and that relationship between Joe Moorhead and Garrett Schrader has made it kind of a South Carolina-Mississippi State battle. Ryan Helinski, a quarterback out of Orange Beach, California, is another guy the Gamecocks are heavily involved with. Unfortunately, Helinski's older brother, was the quarterback at Washington State that committed suicide earlier, I believe, this year or the end of last year. But Ryan Helinski is a guy. So those two guys in particular at the quarterback position. At the offensive line, we continue to see South Carolina kind of try to stack guys. They've already got 3 commitments. Mark Fox, a 4-star lineman out of the Miami area. Jalen Nichols from Charlotte. And then also Vincent Murphy, a 3-star lineman out of St. Aquinas Thomas down in Miami in the Fort Lauderdale area. defensive line, South Carolina's in on a bunch of players, and how that situation pans out, they'll take 5 or 6. I think it's going to be fascinating to watch as well.
Yeah, this Quavaris Crouch, as you mentioned, listed as an athlete, but you lined him up for us out of Charlotte, second rated at his position, number 19 player in the nation, regardless of position. He's that good, top 20 player, regardless of position, according to the 247 composite. All right, we got Will Gunter on the line talking South Carolina football. Of course, he loves college football, so he can talk it straight across the board. So we're going to set everybody up, even you guys listening out there, in regards to some off-season fun topics that we'll hit Will with a little bit later down the line in terms of, okay, take your team, your school, and think about what are the best wins you've ever experienced. Just, they don't have to be championships. They could be insignificant to the rest of us, but just for some reason, they are the best wins that you still cherish. Losses, what is still gut-wrenching, just can't believe that it happened, excruciating to this day, still stings. Favorite player, current team, all-time, best player. Who's the best player on the team right now? Who's the best player of all time? That's always a great topic, talking about the all-time greats, and maybe the best since you've been watching, if you don't want to delve back into the 1950s. Favorite coach, best coach. We're going to hit Will with all those questions. And then I like the change question. If you had all power, all authority of college football, and you could change something in college football, if you could change something in the SEC or whatever conference you root for, and if you could change one thing with your particular school, what would you change? And even we could take it to the nth degree, Will, and you can give people superpowers and say, if you can go back in time and change one thing, you only get one thing to change, what would you change in the course of history? So if you want to give us a little tease into some of that stuff, I'll take it, but I'm not going to pin you down because I didn't give you time to think about it.
Oh no, it's funny. I've thought about a lot of those things, and the one thing I would change is something I bet nobody's thought of. It's maybe not even a university thing, but it's a city of Columbia thing. I think South Carolina could have rivaled what Tennessee does with the river. I don't know how many people have been through Columbia, but there's the Broad River, which is, I guess now the way the campus is, less than a mile from the campus. And if you are familiar with South Carolina, if you've ever been, the football stadium is actually off campus. It's away from campus. It's on the fairgrounds. It's something from the 1930s, 1940s, 1950s, in that time frame. South Carolina could have built an environment that's centered around the Broad River. You'd have probably had to dam it up a little bit on either side and change it. But that was one thing. You talk about a change to South Carolina's programs. If people had the foresight, the stadium would have kind of been right on the edge of campus. And I think would have been just a fascinating. A matter of fact, if I could tear stuff down, they actually just put the baseball stadium there. Probably about 7 or 8 years ago, I guess, is what we're at now. They put the new baseball stadium is actually on the river, right there in Columbia. And you talk about a big change that I would do. Favorite players, those are. I'd say Sterling Sharp. Growing up, number 2. I had him white, garnet, black. I had all the number 2 jerseys, so we can get into that. And current best player, I won't tell you who I think it is, but I'll surprise you because I know a lot of people say Jake Bentley. I'm not going to tell you it's Jake Bentley. I don't think that's the current best player.
Yeah, because it's easy to gravitate to the guys that compile numbers. So it's a wide receiver, it's a running back, it's a quarterback. But for most teams, the best player doesn't play one of those positions for a ton of teams out there. And then we see that at the NFL draft when you're watching the draft and you see a bunch of guys go in the first and 2 rounds that you're thinking, never heard of that guy, but he's got that kind of ability and plays an obscure position, of course. So we try to give love to the offensive linemen here at Mark Rogers TV, and that's why I ask you about them all the time, Will. They just don't get enough, not enough love and attention there for the offensive line. But we always enjoy the conversation with Will Gunter from the all-new Early Game 107.5 The Game. Will, we'll have you on here as soon as we can get you back and carve through some of these topics, and maybe we'll get some news out of Fort Knox or North Korea, whatever you got going there in Columbia.
That's right, Kurt. We'll have to come up with a catchy nickname for the way Muschamp runs that. It's fun. Listen, I get it. And when you're winning, you can get away with it. Nick Saban's gotten away with it for a long time. We laugh right now because the assistant coaches are allowed to speak once here during spring ball, and they will speak once in fall camp, and we'll never hear from them again during the season. So if something's wrong with the offense, Jake Bentley better be able to explain it each and every week at his press conference, but we'll never hear from Brian McClendon. But we'll know more here about this team, a little bit more, in about 10 days when they take the field for the spring game.
They will. Always appreciate the discussion.
Thank you.